This March, I came to the Vatican for this year's Holy Jubilee. Besides walking through the Holy Door, I also visit other regular attractions, so come explore the smallest country in the world with my camera. On this channel, apart from travel vlogs, each episode also features medical topics related to the journey. In this one, I'll be using the example of Pope Francis to explain how to read and understand a medical certificate of cause of death. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's get started after the intro. When you first arrive in Rome, there are two airports you can use, FCO and CIA. We landed at CIA, the smaller one, and we are now heading to the city center by airport bus. After that, we'll take the metro to the area near the Vatican. Tonight, we'll be staying at a little B&B just around the corner. Before we start exploring, let's talk a bit about the history of the Vatican. Although it is only a half square kilometers in size, its history is deeply connected with both the religion and politics of Europe. The Vatican wasn't always a country. In ancient Rome, the area was known as Vatican Hill. It's believed that Saint Peter, the first pope, was martyred and buried right here. So why is Saint Peter considered the first pope? Because, in the Bible, he is called the Prince of the Apostle. Jesus once said to him, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. I will give you the keys to the kingdoms of heaven." These words symbolize that Jesus gave him the authority to lead the church. Among the apostles, Peter was always the first to speak and to act, leading the earliest Christian community. Even today, the Bishop of Rome is seen as a successor, the Pope. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and built the first St. Peter Basilica right over Peter's tomb, making this place the spiritual heart of the Catholic world. During the Middle Age, the Pope's power reached its peak. He ruled over large parts of central Italy, a territory known as the Papal States. In the 19th century, when Italy was unified, most of those lands were absorbed into the new Italian kingdoms. In the 1870s, Italian troops captured Rome. Pope Pius IX refused to recognize the new government and declared himself a prisoner inside the Vatican. For almost 60 years after that, none of the popes ever stepped outside this wall. Rome has a strange situation. A king and a pope living in the same city, yet refusing to recognize each other. It wasn't until 1929, when Pope Pius XI signed the Lateran Treaty with Mussolini, state that the Vatican finally becomes a sovereign state. So the Vatican we see today is actually very young. As a country, it's less than 100 years old. What you can see right now is the Vatican Museum, which we are going to be back later. But at this point, we have something more important to do. We booked to pass through the Holy Door. To pass through the Holy Door, we'll have to join the group. We'll have to check in first, in the building you see on the left-hand side. After that, we'll join the queue, as you can see on the right-hand side. When time is up, the whole pilgrimage group is here, and we are going to the Vatican City, and we're going to pass through the Holy Door at the St. Peter's Basilica together as a whole group. So you can see the whole group is here with the instructions of the volunteers. This year is quite special. It's a holy year in the Catholic Church. The tradition goes back to the year 1300, when it was first held every 50 years, inviting believers to make a pilgrimage, repent, and start anew. Later, it became every 25 years, and in 2025, which is now, is a new holy year. During each Jubilee, the Pope opens the Holy Door. It's a door that normally remains sealed, and is open only during a holy year. Passing through it symbolizes spiritual renewal and the forgiveness of sins. There are 4 major basilicas in Rome with holy doors, and the most important one is right here at St. Peter's Basilica. Before walking through the door, everyone gathers in the square, and the priest leads prayers and hymns, creating his moments of reflections and preparations. After that, we line up and slowly walk through the holy door, step by step, into the Basilica. I also took this chance to walk through myself to experience a tradition that has lasted for more than 7 centuries. And whether you are religious or not, the moment you step through the door, it feels really like something beyond words. We have just go through a security check and enter the Vatican City. So how can you join this event? Well, I'll drop the link in the info box so you can book online in the official website. The group is now approaching the Holy Door. So you can now see the Holy Door, which is the right door of the Basilica. In the past, the Holy Door was actually sealed with bricks. At the start of a whole year, the Pope would strike it 3 times with a golden hammer, symbolizing the opening of grace. Today, the door is still with metal panels instead. Each time it's closed, documents and relics are placed inside, to be opened again in the next Jubilee. On the Holy Door of St. Peter's Basilica, you can see the bronze relief depicted scenes of Christ's redemption and mercy. After getting through the Holy Gates, the group will continue to walk inside the Basilica on the right-hand side of it, and the group will dissolve when we reach the center of the Basilica. At the very center of the Basilica stands this massive bronze canopy, the Baldaquino. It was designed by Bernini and rises nearly 10 stories high, right above the main altar. Beneath it lies the tomb of St. Peter's, and the entire basilica was actually built around the top. At the far end, you can see the golden glow of the chair of St. Peter. Inside it is an ancient wooden seat, believed to have belonged to St. Peter himself. That's also why the Vatican is called the Holy See, literally means the Holy Chair. The white dove in the round windows above represents the Holy Spirit, symbolizing that Pope's authority comes from faith itself. The scale of this space is truly astonishing. From the floor to the top of the dome, it's over 130 meters high. On the floor, there are markings shows the names of other cathedrals around the world, so as you walk, you can compare just how immense this one is. Beneath the main altars lies the Vatican grottos, where many popes are buried. I'll be heading down there later to take a look. Next, we are now heading up to the dome. There are 2 types of tickets, one for the stairs and one for the elevator. I choose to take the stairs this time, but even if you choose the elevator, it only takes you up to the terrace, and from there, you will still have to climb the rest on your foot. Once you reach the terrace, you can admire the dome up close from the outside. The dome of the basilica is truly the soul of the whole building. It was designed by Michelangelo, inspired by the cathedral of his hometown, the famous dome of Brunelleschi in Florence. Michelangelo took that idea even further, made his dome higher, grander, and symbolically closer to heaven. In many ways, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica continued the artistic spirit of Florence, a union of faith and human creativities. The dome rises 136 meters above the floor, making it one of the tallest church domes in the world. Structurally, it has a double shell design. The outer shell supports the exterior stonework, while the inner shell is painted ceiling that we see from the inside of the basilica. Michelangelo passed away before it has finished, but his students completed it, faithfully preserve his proportions and visions. When we reach the dome, we can enjoy the view of Vatican and also the Rome city. Once you are back to the terrace, remember to buy your souvenir here. The souvenir here is cheaper than elsewhere in the Vatican City. We are now heading to the highlight of the entire basilica, the underground tomb of St. Peter's Basilica. As mentioned earlier, the history here can be tracked back to the time of the Roman Empire. Back then, this area was a cemetery outside the city walls, and it is said that St. Peter was buried here after his martyrdom in Rome. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and in the center of here, St. Peter Basilica, directly aligned with the church above. What we are visiting today is the upper floor crypt, above it, built during the 16th century reconstruction, canopy, where many popes and European monarchs are buried. The entire basilica here was built layer by layer John Paul II or Pius X. Beneath our fleet, like the ancient Roman necropolis, the true resting place of St. Peter. But it requires special permission to visit. Unfortunately, we didn't have that chance today. After visiting the dome and the tomb, both the exits are located inside the basilica, so just remember, visit all of them before you really leave the basilica. After visiting the St. Peter's Basilica, there are two things we're going to do. The first thing is that we're going to send some postcard at the post office in the Vatican City. The post office is just right next to the exit of the Basilica, just right here. Just before we leave, let you take a look at the St. Peter squares. We just sent a postcard, but don't rush to leave yet. We still have to get our pilgrim certificate. During the Holy Year, pilgrim can obtain a Jubilee Pilgrim Certificate from the Vatican. This certificate is issued by the Vatican to those who have completed pilgrimage, commemorating the passage through the Holy Door. It includes the pilgrim's name, the date, and the current Jubilee year. You can collect it from the pilgrim's office near the Basilica, which is exactly where we are heading to. After visiting St. Peter's Basilica, another place you can't miss in the Vatican is the Vatican Museum. They were founded in 1506 by Pope Julius II, originally just to display a single Greek scripture. Over the centuries, each pope added more collections, and today is one of the largest museum complexes in the world. The route stretched more than 7 kilometers, which with more than 1,400 rooms, from ancient Greek and Roman statues to masterpieces of Renaissance. When you visit the famous Pinecone courtyard, you can see a huge bronze pinecone. It's actually a sculpture from ancient Rome. It represents spiritual awakening and is a symbol of life and eternity. On our way to the next famous attractions, we can see so many sculptures just on the side of on our way. Why not we spend some time to look at them? This is the famous Gallery of Maps, one of the most impressive corridors in the Vatican Museums. Along both sides are 40 large, hand-painted maps showing different regions of Italy, created by the monk and geographer. These maps were the most accurate of their time, painted in light blue and green pigments that still look vivid today. If you look up, the ceiling is covered with golden Baroque reliefs and painting. It's unbelievably fantastic. The Raphael rooms are among the most important art space in the Vatican Museum. They were originally part of the Pope's private apartments, and Raphael spent more than 10 years painting all the walls and ceilings. The most famous of all is the School of Athens, which shows the Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle, surrounded by other ancient thinkers. Finally, we're now heading to the very heart of the Vatican Museum, the Sistine Chapel. Although filming isn't allowed inside, I still want to share this place with you. The chapel was built in the late 15th century, commissioned by the Pope at that time, and that was what the name Sistine comes from. The ceiling was painted by Michelangelo between 1508 and 1512. He was originally a sculptor and didn't want to take on this project, but in the end, he created one of the greatest masterpieces in human history. The 9 central panels tell stories from the book of Genesis. The most famous is the creation of Adam, the moment when God and Adam reach out their hand, almost touching. That single image becomes a symbol of the entire Renaissance. Decades later, Michelangelo returned to paint the Last Judgment on the outer wall. The scene is full of power and movement, showing souls rising to heavens and falling into dimensions. Today, the chapel is still used for Papal Conclave, the election of a new pope. When a new pope is chosen, white smoke rises above the chapel, announcing to the world, we have a pope. I'm sure everyone still remembers vividly the moment when Pope Leo XIV was elected. We are now at the final section of the museum. Here you can see many ancient Egyptian artifacts and mummies, but honestly, I don't think it's a real highlight of the Vatican Museum. It's more like a quick stop. At this point, I can't help but think of the other 2 most famous museums in the world, the British Museum and the Louvre. If the Louvre is the temple of art, and the British Museum is a treasure house of history and knowledge, then the Vatican Museum are where faith and art come together. The collections here are more than just works of art. They represent thousands of years of religion, culture, and human civilization. One thing I've noticed is how well organized the museum layout is. The route is very clear, and even though there's so much to see, you never feel lost or go around in the circles. After picking up a few souvenirs at the gift shop, then our Vatican part of this trip is almost done. In the next episode, I'll continue exploring Rome, but before that, let's move on to the medical section of this video. And next, I'll move on to the medical part of this video. This time, the topic we'll explore is the medical certificate of death, cause of death. It may sound like a rather heavy subject, but it's actually something that concerns every one of us. In this segment, I'll use the example of Pope Francis as a case study to show you what information is included in the medical certificate of death and how to interpret it properly. Let's start by looking at the documents we are talking about today. This is the official declaration of the death of Pope Francis, published by the Vatican Press Office. It lists the time, place, and medical cause of his death. The format of it closely follows the WHO standard for death certificates, which is used worldwide. To really understand what each part means, we need to first understand the history of the medical certificate of cause of death. The ideas of recording cause of death goes all the way back to 17th century London during the time of the plague. Back then, authorities began compiling weekly bills of mortality to track how many people were dying of plague in each parish. It was a way to monitor the spread of disease. Later, statisticians William Farr analyzed those records and realized the mortality data could reveal patterns of public health and disease. Their work laid the foundations for modern vital statistics and epidemiology. By the 19th century, Britain requires doctors to certify every death. Like this one, the cause of death was listed as apoplexy, which means stroke. By the 20th century, the World Health Organization realized that although most countries record deaths, they all did it differently. Some list heart failure, some wrote infections, and even the same disease might have completely different names in different language. That makes international health statistics impossible to compare. So after the WHO was founded in 1948, it introduced 2 global standards. 1. The International Classifications of Disease, a coding system that categorizes every cause of death. 2. The Standard Medical Certificate of Cause of Death, a unified format requiring doctors to list cause in sequence from the underlying disease to the final event. Together, these systems allow death certificates around the world to speak at the same language. They are essential for global health research, epidemiology, and policy making. Based on the WHO standard, the documents have 2 important parts. Part 1 records the change of events leading to death, starting from the underlying disease all the way to the final step that caused death. Part 2 lists other significant conditions that contribute to death but weren't part of the direct chain. It's also important to distinguish between cause of death and mode of death. Modes of death, like cardiac arrest or respiratory failure, are just physiological mechanisms, not true medical cause. Now let's go back to the example of Pope Francis. I've already marked the part 1 and part 2. So follow the causal chain. The stroke was the underlying cause, which led to coma, and eventually resulted in irreversible cardiovascular collapse. Then in part 2, we can see he had a past history of pneumonia, bronchitis, hypertension, and diabetes. This didn't directly cause death, but they influenced the overall clinical pictures, though they need to be recorded as the contributing factors. In summary, Pope Francis' cause of death was a stroke. A medical certificate of cause of death isn't just a legal document, it's also a reflection of public health. Each line of data represents not just our own life, but also a piece of knowledge that helps us understand disease, improve medicines, and prevent future tragedies. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. Leave your comments below and tell me what you think. If you don't like it, just remember to share it with your friends. See you next time.